welcome, welcome. I feel a lot of people, if this is everything that we have, then please feel free to move forward as well. If this is, if all these front rows are going to be left empty, we might as well, for the photos, make sure that it looks like there's a lot of people
Come on,
here.
help us out here.
Yes.
Don't be afraid.
Thank you.
There's going to be a large amount of audience interaction as well, just to prepare you for that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I have an absolute pleasure to be here today to Independent Hotel Show and to host the panel with these expert three gentlemen sitting right in front of me. Allow me to introduce them to you, starting all the way on the left, the board of directors, or one of the members of the board of directors from the very event space that we're in right now, Maurits van der Sluis from the Raad. Thank you so much for joining. I'll just do, yeah, exactly. Joining us as well from the CEO from Freemotion, John. John, thank you so much for joining us. John Harris.
Thank you.
And last but not least, a company that we're all very familiar with as well here in the Netherlands, Kuilboer from Heineken. Thank you so much for joining us. The overarching question that we're talking about today is how can we continue to see challenges as opportunities, or how can we continue to see opportunities in challenges? And I have the pleasure of talking on a strategic level with all three of these gentlemen. Starting with a big topic that has played a major role in all of our lives in the past 2 years is the corona pandemic, and I would like to start with you, Maurits. Obviously, event and corona have played a very interesting role. They've had they've met their match, so to say, and I would like to ask you specifically, how did you continue to see opportunities in this pandemic? How did you continue to look for opportunities?
Well, to be honest, I didn't see any opportunities at one moment because this was a disastrous time for us, of course. Exactly 2 years ago, yesterday, we closed down. We had a boat show and we had to break it down. And then we were closed for 18 months. And then we opened up in September for 11 weeks. And then we closed down again in December. And this actually is the first show. So I'm a bit euphoric at the moment that we have a first trade show after let's say after 2 years. Mm-hmm. So a lot of challenges and of course also a lot of opportunities. The challenges of course were surviving. Yeah. We're a private company, so we got a lot of support from the Dutch government, like all companies in the Netherlands did. But we also had to take our measurements. We had to do a big reorganization. We had to let go 200 people, and of course we had to manage a crisis, and that's a thing I hadn't done before in this size, of course. So there were challenges, but there were also opportunities.
Could you name them, like specifically?
Well, one of the things is that you learn from a crisis, and when it's over, it's probably you will say, well, I developed myself more than I did when everything was easy and everything was going well. We as a company did. We have to work with less people, be more efficient. That is an opportunity. I think we're a better company now. We were a bit fat. I became a bit fat from Corona, but the company became much smaller and more lean and mean. Another thing is the whole digital development. We've been talking about the digitalization of our industry, of our live events. And we've been talking about that for 15 years, and it was going very slowly. And we said, we made so much money with live events. This digital part is okay, but the acceleration we had over the past 2 years is immense. So we might now get the benefit of investing and learning from this whole digitalization of our industry.
Is there a specific moment for you when you felt, okay, there's challenges, and then now digitalization? Now I feel we're capitalizing on these challenges and making them opportunities? Was there a moment in time?
No, this was a dynamic. Right. There's a process, okay. and I mean, our focus was on surviving, and that's different from seeing challenges and being happy. We try to be positive, of course. Yeah. But as you know, we had a lot of hope, and the whole Corona crisis was. But then we thought, well, it's over. There's a vaccination. There's this. There's that, and then you fall down again. So. Yeah. It was more challenging than seeing opportunities. I'm starting to see the opportunities now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to take the question to the other panelists as well. John, how was that for you? Did you have a specific moment when you felt, okay, there's challenges, but we're going to overcome them and they're going to become opportunities?
I think for our organization, we have the luxury of not only, I work on the commercial side of the exercise equipment and technology side, but also a very robust residential side. So the residential side exploded. And so there was a balancing act between what we could do on the residential side with people wanting to stay active and do something in home, but our primary customers, gyms, clubs, those types of gathering places really shut down, and then all of a sudden there goes your revenue stream, very similar to Rai. And so honestly, I think it was an attitudinal change, and it was, this is what we have, now we were shifting to what is it you need, and how can we balance and help one another.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of our organization as a global company is, you're learning from what's working, what's tracking, really anywhere, and then how to share that information with your customers and your partners, et cetera. So trying to basically keep some faith and understanding who you were going to surround yourself with and do work and work with, who is at least open to the understanding that we can't control very much of what's happening right now, so we can either lament about that, or we can decide we need to do something different and make sure that we're communicating what we are available and what we can provide. And so it certainly wasn't easy. I mean, I don't want to sum up the last 2 years in about 45 or 50 seconds, but it was, I think, an inflection point for us, and looking and shifting really from a durable goods, steel and plastics manufacturer to put stuff together from an exercise equipment, to pivoting and understanding that the technology that we have translates in so many other directions. So it's not just what goes on in a gym, but how do you integrate and work with people wherever they are, just in order to keep them more active.
Ultimately,
I'd like to also say real quick, based on my Irish heritage, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I just need to make sure I get that out.
Nice,
so,
nice. What I like a lot, and then like you already highlighted it a little bit, is what it is that you do, specifically the two different areas and how they can learn from one another. I think it's interesting you mentioned you changed your value proposition in what you were offering, but ultimately did you see a big change in value proposition from the consumer side, what they were looking for?
I think the real bridge was, how do you connect with people? It wasn't just you purchase a treadmill, a bike, etc. The statistics on usage for home exercise equipment is terrible. It really is. I mean, so in order for us to activate what we were delivering on the residential side, we had to create some form of communication and technology, so from a digital content standpoint. Ironically, most of our commercial consumers were looking for ways in which to stay connected to their membership. And one of those bridges was, well, we should get into virtual, similar to what we're talking about here at Raad, and saying, well, how do you bring your club experience into a person's home? That sounds like an easy proposition in many respects, but if you're really serious about it, it's a daunting task, because our attention span is so limited when it comes to what we can do from an activity standpoint. You have to be able to create ways in which to stay relevant and stay connected with people.
Have
our
you?
platform, absolutely. What we've seen really since pandemic was just a threefold increase in exercise compliance, just based upon how people engage with series of progressive exercise opportunities, but then also creating personalities and helping folks to understand that there is somebody out there that you can relate to that probably has a similar story that you do. That was really, frankly, very foreign in the commercial world. Now it's become, how do you create your gym without walls and find ways in which to connect with people wherever they are?
Interesting question. I'm glad you were looking for the answer and that I don't have to that question. I would like to take it to you, Jos, as well, because ultimately we've heard from challenges as well, but in a prior interview you also mentioned that there's a huge change in what people are looking for as a result of the pandemic, the premiumization, for example. How are these strategic challenges for you in light of the pandemic?
Yeah, I don't think premium is driven by the pandemic, to say first.
Sorry.
But yeah, I think we were a bit in the same boat as the Rai was. So it was tough for 2 years, and we really had to work on the cost base as well as a Heineken. But yeah, of course there were challenges. So what we did, we really trimmed the cost base, but we kept the lights on the sales force. So we acquisition, we even speeded it up. We had quite a clear strategy. So we we kept on working on the strategy, also on the digitization part of it. And then it's a bit easier because all your logistics people, you don't serve any beer. So all your processes you're able to map, to improve, to digitize. So we even employed more people on the digital part of our business to really accelerate on that. So I think we were really able to boost our strategy the last 2 years. But on the other hand, it was a very heavy balancing act on having the cost levels healthy as well. Yeah.
Maybe ultimately the question that I think I have, and I think many people in the audience, is now the question is where to now? We've spoken quickly, given a bit of an overview of how difficult this period has been strategically, but from where we are now, what strategic changes are you making, or strategic decisions are you making to move forward? Maybe start on that side of the couch. Yeah.
Well, the good thing is that let's say before we opened up in September, I had a lot of discussions with a lot of people, with our stakeholders, our shareholders, our supervisory board about, is it gone? Live events are over. And I was defending this, and they were calling me a coal mine worker because they believed the coal mine, but they are opening now, I think, so it wasn't that bad. But and I had to put a lot of stress into convincing people that live events will stay. Yeah. And we proved from September till November that it was happening. Old people, young people, everybody was coming to RAI. We've never been this busy in 11 weeks before. So now, when we reopen yesterday, I don't have to do that anymore. So our strategy, and we talked about our strategy of the company, stays the same. We believe in live events. We also believe in a further digitalization next to our events. But it was already in our strategy. So our main strategy didn't really change. We took the time during the pandemic to talk about this area, for instance, but that's very RAI-specific strategy, is that we are in the most expensive part of the Netherlands, and we don't have high-rise buildings here, so we're talking about with the city and with all project developers, how can you make more use of this space? But that is a good thing. We had time to think about that. But our main strategy as a event business, as exhibitions, conferences, organizer, and venue, hasn't changed, and that's a good thing.
That's
I think.
Interesting.
Well, of course, it changes always a bit, but not through the pandemic. We say now we have to go really a different way. We thought that before.
Yeah. Interestingly, the question to you, John, is that the same for you? Is it a bounce back effect to the old, or is the new staying?
I think I don't think we have an alternative to stay with what we might have relied on in the past, and so for us, it really is embracing what experience we can deliver. It's not just, I mean, I've been in this industry a long time. I mean, exercising is boring. And there's a reason why people start, stop, and disconnect from it, and because there's other things that we would rather be doing and take our attention. But we all recognize the benefits for it in many respects. So how can you embrace and create an experience where you're going to engage people versus distract them? So we were just as guilty as everyone else, where let's put a TV on a piece of equipment, or let's provide some things just to keep you somewhat distracted from what you're doing. But we've really leaned into how do we create distinctive experiences so you can relate to what it is you're doing and how it transforms into how you live your life. So what we're seeing is, exercise from a health perspective is undeniable, but how can we help you do the things that you love to do recreationally with less effort, with more safety, with more strength, etc. And so again, it's going back to what I said earlier. It's, what do you need versus this is what we have. And so I think there's just an attitudinal shift.
So could you give a specific example? Say, like, if you ask the question, what do you need? What would somebody say? Like, let's say Jos asked you the question.
I think it depends on the audience. So if you're talking about someone who's in the gym space, which is obviously a place where we spend a lot of our time, it's not only the acquisition, but more importantly, the retention of members, which funds and fuels how the success of a business, no different than from an event space. And from a hotel perspective, we want to create environments and experiences that separate you from your competition, increase RevPAR, however you want to assess those metrics. What we're trying to do is just be distinctive and be, I guess, nimble enough to recognize what each of those market segments need. We talked about what you see in the residence side, not the individual residents, although the sum tracks a little bit with how people are building out garages into gyms and so forth. But certainly in the multifamily or condominium apartment complex, there's an arms race on the amenity side of things. So from a competition standpoint, those public spaces are really being activated. Yeah. And again, it's what kind of experience can I deliver, and how do we play a role in that?
Yeah, interesting. Jos, I want to talk to you about something specific that I think is interesting, something you mentioned before as well, is we hear this shift in what people are looking for. Simultaneously, I have the luxury of sitting here as possibly a new generation. Do you see a difference in the value proposition that people are looking for, perhaps as a result of the pandemic, but perhaps also as a result of this new generation entering the workforce?
Yeah, and I think it even differs per generation what the proposition, where it's shifting. But within our industry, we really see the difference. So if you look at the millennials, you see that if they think it's value for money, they are willing to pay even a little bit more for something which is really premium, which is really authentic, which is unique. So therefore, we launched the brand Birra Moretti. Yeah? So it's related to dining with friends. So it's okay if you pay a little bit more for it, but the premium part is really resonating within that group. If you look at Gen Z coming up, which is by far the biggest target group for us as a brewer, it's more about the health trends and how authentic is it, and so therefore last week we launched Heineken Silver, which is lower in alcohol, more accessible to drink. So, but it's also linked to health and because you see, well.
So you're encouraging
I'm
us
from
to
a
drink
generation
more.
Dutch students where it was okay if you gained 20 kilos more and you lost it when you start working again. But Gen Z nowadays, it's a bit the American student how I have them in mind. It's healthy, it's fit. So you also need to have that product available, that relevant product for the target audience. So yeah, so you really see shifting, and it's coming more distinguished per group, I think. Yeah.
I think it's a nice concrete example of something you're doing differently. I'm going to look to the gents on that side. Have you taken concrete examples like this one to say, like a new brand or a new opportunity specifically to these new generations or this new target market?
Well, I have two daughters. They're younger than you are, so that helps. Listening to young people. Now we have a lot of young people working here of all generations, of course, and we take them seriously, and we need to listen. And of course, part of our audience, of our clients, is also from that generation, organizing a dance party here or whatever. So we take it into account. We involve them in our decision taking in the company.
Has that shifted? Like have you started doing that now all of a sudden? Or
in our case, because we were closed, it was, well, we listened to them how to work from home. They were better at that than I was, but no, it didn't happen through the pandemic. This is a thing in society that's taking place over years, and it's happening all the time. When we talked about millennials, that was 10 years ago, and now we talk about Generation Z or Z, or so. I think this will go on and on and on. And the most important thing for old white men, that's 3 times not good, is that you listen to everybody, and especially to young people.
Yeah, I think ultimately that is a topic that we wanted to discuss upon later as well, but we are conscious of the fact that we are sat here as 3 white men, or 4 white men in this case, on the couch doing a panel. So
you'll be there in 30 years.
Yeah,
so
you said that to me. So, yeah, but I do think that's a valuable question, is how do you ensure diversity and inclusion in your organization and keep seeing it as an opportunity, sort of pointed to the topic of today, keep seeing it as an opportunity in the future. Who dare? Yeah, everybody looking at each other. John, I'll start with you. Yes.
I think I think the challenge is, which is ultimately the incredible opportunity, is to not look at as diversity or inclusion as a subset or a requirement. And so, because if you look at it that way, I think really anything from a requirement standpoint, you approach it with this perfunctory attitude of, well, we need to do this, and does that need what's the bare minimum? What do we need? What's the benchmark? Where do we have to get to? Versus how far should we go? And view it as an opportunity to expand your listening skills and understand that diversity means so many different things. At least from the state's perspective, I hate to go with this parallel. Most of the time when people hear diversity, they only really move towards color.
Yeah.
And there's so many other places for us to be able to go and understand from all different walks of life and age. And it really is, you either feel like you have an attitude of being a professional student and you're constantly learning and evolving. Doesn't mean you can meet everyone where they might be or where they want to go. At least I think if you have the attitude to put yourself in that position, honestly, the conversations are so much more robust, and then you just have to challenge yourself as what can we do. So I think from our standpoint, it really just comes back to how intentional do you want to be, how open do you want to be, how vulnerable do you want to be as an organization, and be fearless in how you ask questions and how your curiosity. And then be prepared to understand what you might need to do in order to address them.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic opportunity as well. There will be a Q&A part later as well, but ultimately in this topic, obviously none of us have all the answers, but if you do have any questions, then feel free to raise your hand. There's in the back, there's a microphone. I'm looking at the back. Yes. So if you have any questions that you'd like to specifically ask in between the panel or to one of the gentlemen related to any of the topics we discussed, then feel free, jump in and I think it's very important, like you said, be fearless in our curiosity, but open up the floor for any interesting questions that you may have. Audience needs to warm up.
I view that as we're doing such a phenomenal job answering your questions. I really have nothing else to.
But I do feel like I want to. I think it's important, especially now. I mean, I have the luxury of sitting here with 20 years of age and be able to ask you questions. And I think like there might be many more people in the audience that say like, oh, I have plenty of questions that I'd like to ask. So I want to open up the floor and simultaneously continue the discussion. How is this new generation or this diversity topic? How do you keep seeing that as an opportunity, or how is that an opportunity for Heineken? Maybe that's a better question.
Yeah, so you mean having this generation in your company and how to treat them. Well, it's a difficult generation, so, and it's already strange for me putting that, because it's a lot to do about self-development, but it's also about quick self-development. So it often happens to me that people knock on the door like, I'm already 5 months in the job, so what's next? And then the answer is more a bit like learning the job and then accelerating in it. But you have to keep it exciting. But I think it's also interesting. I think one way or the other, you have to adapt to it as a company and you have to learn from it. But because what you see happening in the company with the younger generation, it's also your market context outside of the company. It's also how your consumers are behaving. So I think in the end that you have to match the two. So how you build your brand and how you operate your company, it has to be in sync. So this generation is very, for example, very focused on sustainability, but not about CO2 certificates or about greenwashing. It's about really what are you doing. Take Patagonia, it's big within the group, and yeah, I understand why. But it's also for us like, all right, if we are talking sustainability, what are we really doing in terms of action? So I have some young people working on electric transport in the city centers. That's what triggers them. So on the one hand, it's the corporate agenda, and you're innovating and you're accelerating, and on the other hand, it's some kind of growth and purpose insight for the generation. So I think in the end it needs to be in line, and you can't look away from it. So it is tough, and because we aren't used to this pace of change inside the company. But in the end, I think we need to adapt to it, and it will help us externally as well.
Is it difficult to bring those two completely different levels, sort of like the all the way up here, the strategic level, to down there together?
I think the concept not, but the speed of change, that's difficult for a corporate as Heineken. Yeah. Once it's being developed at the head office here in Amsterdam, and it trickles down to the mechanics somewhere in the northern part of the Netherlands, mostly there's a phase like of a year, 1.5 year, and that you need to accelerate. And there is, I think, your digital ways of communicating are really helping us. So normally we had a presentation of the CEO and then the European president and general manager, and they all went on stage and then they went telling. And now it's just one big Teams call or whatsoever. Everybody's dialing in, and everybody has the context from the CEO, and they can relate to it. So I think what's important is not exactly how you have to do it, but I think what's really important is that everybody knows the context of the company, and you have some kind of entrepreneurial framework where they are allowed to make their own choices, no matter what level in the company. So I think it's keeps us sharp.
Nice, Maurits. I saw you nodding as well. Are you in big team calls with the entire company?
Yep. Every 2 weeks during the pandemic, because we were closed at home. So and then you're talking to all the staff, and that was more informing what the situation was like, expectations, and.
So how do you?
But I don't do that during the normal process. Then it doesn't happen. No.
So how do you gather input, like from your daughters? You said, but
yeah, well, there's getting input. That's talking, listening. That's what I said before. But on the other hand, there's another movement in society. Is that decision taking is not only taken by me. If I look at the people before me, the CEO before me, or before that. They were taking 99 of 100 decisions in a company. I'm taking 10. Because what we try to do, and that's a cultural thing we'd like to change, it's not only your generation, but also the generation older than you, is that we want decision making, take your responsibility on the lower level. Yeah. And I believe that they can make better decisions than I can on certain subjects. So and that changed during the pandemic, because I had to go down again because money was an issue, and I had to take much more decisions. And the past 3 months I tried to let it go again, because we were in a process before COVID of having people, giving them their own responsibility, taking their own decisions on their own level, or even company-wide decisions. And I hear they took a decision. I say, okay. And sometimes I don't agree, or I agree. And I think that's a movement that's much more important, and that suits to your generation, but it suits to every generation.
So how does that work with decisiveness? Does it influence the decisiveness at all of a company? Like the fact that decisions are
It's easier when you're smaller. I think that's easier, but the challenge is to do it with a big company as well. I think it can be done, and we do actually training programs. We did it. We used to do it with we hired a company to do that, but we did it ourselves the past 2 years because we didn't have the money, and we had one last week, and it's about this. It's a cultural change in your company, and this will take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You can't do it from one day to the other, but I see it's getting better. If I compare situation in Rye 5 years ago and now, people are feel much safer to take decisions on every level.
So if we have you back on the couch in 5 years, what will we see differently in the decision making of Rye?
I'm sitting here, I'm not doing anything, I'm watching everybody take decisions.
Okay.
It makes my life a lot easier, I tell you.
Nice.
And of course I take decisions, and there are things they're mine. Yeah. But it's not on everything. When I became this job 5 years ago, I was becoming CEO, I was asked questions, and I thought, why do you ask me? Just make sure you can do it much better. So, and this is a change in attitude in the whole company.
Nice.
if I could just pick up on that for a second. So back to talking about inclusion in some respects. I mean, that's hopefully part of the corporate culture is that we're including people in that decision-making process. Ultimately, as any manager, wherever level you are, your best decision should be who you surround yourself with and who you hire. And so why would you want to, my dad used to say this, we hired you for your skills and your attitude, not let me tell you how you're going to do your job. And I think those days are fortunately behind us in the sense that what can you bring to us? How can you challenge us? What are some of the things that are bothering you or concerning you? Where those opportunities exist? And not feel the pressure to make 99% of those decisions and be comfortable with the fact that there are opportunities to learn from people regardless of their seasoning and maybe their maturity level. So, to me, it's the longer I get in the tooth, to me, it's an opportunity to constantly be that student and looking at things. And I kind of think back a little bit about raising, my wife and I have 4 sons from 4 men, and the worst question a parent ever gets at 2 or 3 years of age is why, because it just keeps going, right? So for this generation, we need to approach our communication with the understanding that we're going to be asked why. Yeah. Why should I care about this? Why is this something that's important to me, and why is this important to the company? Why should this be important to our customers? And so if you approach it with the anticipation you're going to be asked, particularly with your generation, Thom, I think, frankly, you do a much better job of conveying what it is you want to share before being asked for it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to know as the panel from the people sitting here? Any input or feedback that you'd like to gather? What I mean is, obviously, you're looking for input just as much that they'd like to ask questions to you, I can imagine, before we open up the floor to that side.
Probably the first question is, what's the best Irish bar in Amsterdam?
Fair enough.
On? So
Fair enough.
We'll start with that, but no.
I'm happy everybody's here. And I hope you like it to be live again on an event, and that's that feedback I'd like to hear, of course, and that's important for us.
Obviously.
And I think for all of you, because you're in the same business.
You may want to know about Silver Heineken, how that's doing, and do a little focus group.
No,
I
don't think we have any traction on that after a week.
Drink more.
I guess for me it would be how have your guests' needs changed, and what are their expectations? And if there's not a problem to talk about cleanliness or understanding what the pandemic's forced us to do or consider when it comes to those types of things, but what are guests sharing with you, or what are some of the things that may have surprised you as things kind of return, hopefully to some sense of normalcy?
I love how everybody's trying not to make eye contact with me. Everybody's like, no, don't ask me. Gentlemen at the front here.
Maybe I can add another one.
Yeah.
And, people can pick. So, but I think we all are experiencing the same. Society is open again, and it's booming again. So it's and I think it's the same for the hotel business in certain areas of the country. But how do you find the right people, keep the right people, and accelerate on your business again? Because it's going from 0 to 110, at least for our company. And that makes it pretty challenging. So, and I think that the hotel industry has a bit the same dynamics, as well as the event sector. So how do you deal with that? And is there anything I can learn from it?
Does that answer your question, John? Because otherwise it will be a very small panel, just the 4 of us. So I would like to open up the floor.
It was another question. It was not an answer.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes.
I have a question for you. Jos, I heard you talk about digitalization of communication throughout your company and Heineken to share your vision or share new plans and strategies to do it in a quicker way instead of pre-pandemic, right? But how do you deal with this on a cultural level to actually make a mindset change on an individual level in a company as yours to not only communicate but to also execute the company to make sure you support sustainable culture for the next generations coming up?
Yeah. So I think it's really about So it's more two questions, but I think they go hand in hand. It's really showing that you care, but also showing that you make a difference. So for me, I'm really active on this electrical transportation part in Amsterdam, and I post on it, but I also post on it on LinkedIn, and it's also really to show the people, like, all right, guys, I'm leading this one together with some other colleagues, in the hope that it inspires others also to do. And what is a change for us is normally we build a big plan with stage gates and a roadmap and so on. And now, in these times where changes are faster, it's a bit more pioneering. So it's what I share are just sub-steps. Like, all right, this is why we are doing it and why I think it's important. But we built the first truck. So I and then I'm communicating about it. But it's not that I electrified all the transportation in Amsterdam. So it's really sharing the small steps and sharing those successes. But I think it's also how you share it, because it's not that I ask the communication department to help me to make a great movie about it or what. So I just and that I noticed about the younger generation. They just pick the phone, shoot a movie with their hand, and just send it out. That's the way I personally do it, but also my management team is doing it. So it's also like, hey, I'm in this outlet, I see this execution of our brands, guys, it's perfect, and you throw it out. And you hope that it's not only the management doing that, but also the people in the organization. So it starts snowballing. So is that a bit an answer where you were looking for? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I understand it's about engaging people in the way that you communicate, I guess, to sort of snowball the effect of building the culture. That's what I'm getting?
Yeah, and really taking the lead. So it's not only talking about it, but if you think it's important, as a leader, you really have to take the ownership, but also show that you're delivering the results for the company, and not only let your people in your organization delivering. So, and I think it's also about taking a stand on wider topics. If I look to our CEO, he's really taking a stand on International Women's Day because of diversity. It's we had to make a stand on the war at the moment. But it's out in the open. It's for everybody, and I think it's part of who you are as a company, but also what you want to embody as a brand. And there, your internal and external, I think, comes together again.
Nice. Yes.
I actually have a question. When the pandemic hit, it was scary, but it put a real microscope on you, the leaders of big businesses, and you had to speak to your employees differently. Everyone was looking to you for sort of what to do next, what does this mean? It was uncharted territories for everyone, but specifically you, because everyone was looking at you and what to do. I just wanted to know what your experience of that was. What did you change, and have you brought that into your business now?
Yeah, for me it was very difficult to find a balance between warning that it was a real thing and also staying positive. And you have to be real there, because people won't believe you if you say I'm very positive and everything is closed. So, but we had to find a balance between this feeling that people were very insecure. There were people getting fired. There was the whole atmosphere in this company was, of course, disastrous. Yeah. And on the other hand, we wanted to, every 2 weeks we had these webinars, and we wanted to give people some confidence, some trust, some positive thinking. And that was sometimes difficult. And what I find out through the way, and we did that before, is that show who you are. I mean, you have to be, it's very open, an open door, we say in Dutch. I mean, I don't know if that's English.
Straightforward.
Be yourself and don't play any game. So we have a very good communication manager, he's in the back, and we always talked about this, and we said, if you feel this, say this, and people will be more happy to hear what you really feel. Show your own insecurity, because I was insecure myself. We didn't know. and yeah, through the time that helped, and my relation with our 350 people that work in the RAI now, yeah, well, it's not a good thing to say that the pandemic helped, but the pandemic helped in getting this relation much closer and much better.
Yeah.
If I could compliment or add on to that, and so we kind of looked at this as an opportunity to be authentically honest, and so the fact was that most of my conversations really at the beginning of this had really little to do with work. It had everything to do with how are you doing, how's your family doing, let's talk about some things. And frankly, the relationships that were developed as a result of that are so much more rich today. Not everybody, I would say, took to it easily, because there's almost like how vulnerable do I need to be and how much do I need to share, and and then creating conduits and other relationships where if I had a person who was handling this better than I might have expected and someone who was really struggling, how do we make sure that they're communicating? So you didn't want to necessarily be the only person, and was helping folks understand that we have an awful lot of remote employees, and so although the work environment certainly changed for those folks that are in gathering spaces as well, we just felt the need to stay connected and not necessarily schedule everything, just pick up the phone and call somebody. Versus texting them, you know. God forbid I get one of my kids to answer the phone when I call, but if I text them, it's amazing how they get right back to you. So.
No, I really like that honesty, and even I think the question "How are you?" has changed. Whereas sometimes it's a formality: "How are you? Good. How are you?" And then you move on, and that's it. So, looking towards the future, is there an emotion that you would use to describe it?
Emotion?
If you look into your hearts now, like what do you feel?
Well, I told somebody yesterday the Queen was here and she went to the refugee center, and I said, well, I've been a director of a vaccination center, testing center, and now of a Ukrainian refugee center, and I want to be director of a convention center again. So that's my biggest emotion. Although there is a war, there's a lot of things happening. We don't shout out that we're happy, but internally we have a internal party tonight, a kind of Christmas Eve. We do it tonight because we haven't done it for 2 years. And I say internally, please be happy. Be happy that we're open, that we're back in business. Of course, to the rest of the world, there's something else happening, and that's even worse than probably the pandemic. But that's my emotion at the moment. It's in between being very happy and also concerned about what is this gonna bring us again.
Very nice.
I don't know if you'd classify transparency as an emotion, but I think there's an authenticity connected to that. This was uncharted waters for us on so many different levels, and so to think you were going to get every interaction and communication
Are you curious? Is curious like the transparency, but it sounds like you're curious towards the future.
I think ultimately is, I keep referring back to student, and the point is that this world is changing so quickly, and the industry that I'm in is changing so fast. The way we interact with people and the expectations our customers have are changing. So you have to constantly be curious and asking questions, not just assuming you know what's best, or because it's things are evolving, and you either decide that you want to be part of that and embrace it, or you're going to wonder what'd you miss, or what happened. And I'm a big fan of that. We try not to be in the used to business like we used to do that. We want to try to be out in front and helping folks understand what we can provide.
Then as a last one, Jos, I'd like to ask you as well, before we round up, is how are you, what is your emotion, feeling towards the future? How are you looking towards the future?
Yeah, I think proud and excited.
Proud and excited.
What we didn't talk about is, of course, we had our reorganizations in the company, and I think everybody had his own challenges. But if you see the whole network of our business, but I think it's very closely linked to the hospitality business, how you see it bouncing back, and everybody taking their share, and it's companies making mechanical parts, but it's also people in the event business and the catering industry whatsoever. if you see the whole network bouncing back, that really gives me energy. And if I look at what's on the agenda for this summer, it's crazy, and it's going very, very fast. So and if you then look back to all the changes we've had and all the tough decisions we had to make, but everybody was part of it. So, and then in the end, we're an industry where we also serve fun and joy, and so and you see it coming back. That really excites me.
Thank you. I think that concludes the panel. We've heard emotion, curiosity, proud, concerned, a lot of positive emotions, some concerned, and a mix, a dualism between the two. But I want to thank all of you so much for joining. I want to thank the audience for the questions that we did manage to cover. I think you may be around here a little bit. If we can tackle one of you, if you still have any remaining questions. Other than that, thank you so much for joining this panel.
Thank you. Thank you.